Greetings all. Welcome back to the Green Garden Guy Show. Ordinarily, I'm talking about growing food, sometimes talking about herbal medicine, grumpy gardener. On occasion, we talk about the land itself, and sometimes investments that might allow you to buy some land. Otherwise, I don't talk about flowers very often. That doesn't mean I don't raise them. I have a lot of flowers here, actually, and I am a firm believer in how important flowers are in a garden, whether the point is foods or not. It's really kind of irrelevant that way. Plus, almost everything except mushrooms flower anyway, and ferns. So there's flowers on avocados, flowers on citrus, all sorts of things like that. But today I'm going to specifically talk about the orchid. We're right here on what's known as the Orchid Isle. And Hawaii barely had any orchids originally at all. The orchids that we have here were actually imported. They were brought here, and the vast majority of them love it. They love it here. Yes, some are spreading like weeds. Others minding their own business, but doing really well. This is the easiest place I have ever been on earth to raise orchids. And as things go, my partner, Ellen, is president-elect of the Hilo Orchid Society and also the membership chair. And so, and it is the largest organization of its type, citizens organization like that, around horticulture on the island. Doesn't get any bigger than the Hilo Orchid Society. Right here behind me, you'll see this dainty little guy. She's a beauty. I'm not an orchid expert, and so I can't tell you for sure exactly what variety this is. It looks like it's probably an Oncidium. I suspect the reason it's in the tree is because the tag was missing. Yes, usually the ones that lose the tag, so we can't figure out what the heck they are, but they're nice. They get hung up in trees, and on the sides of trees around this property, you will find hundreds of orchid plants dangling from the trees. Well, here we have one sticking off the bottom of my Page Tangelo hybrid here. She's really a beautiful red color. Orchids are that easy to grow around here. They're just literally hanging them in the trees. It's about all you have to do most of the time. Here's a beetle nut palm with a hana orchid hanging off it. These are extraordinary pretty flowers when they're in season. Beautiful autumn gold colored Oncidium is growing in a native Hawaiian hibiscus. This is the Waimea white. And when your ohias die from rapid ohia death, like this one did, you can always tie orchids on the stumps. Yes, sir. We got orchids here for every application. This little epilobium down here is basically operating as a ground cover, mixed with perennial peanuts. And right here we have a collection of some really nice small flowered orchids. Well, here we have a real nice kind of leopard spotted Oncidium. I believe this is another one that is lacking tags. This beautiful little thing here is one of the terrestrial orchids that grows on the ground. This one right here is almost black. This is the type that loses all the foliage when it comes to bloom. It's one of the species orchids, I believe. Ellen has a passion, really, for the very wild types. This is definitely a wild form of dendrobium here, with these little cute white flowers on it. Here we have another one of those gorgeous little golden autumn leaf colored Oncidium. This cute little pink one. I don't even know what this is. It's lost its tag. It's sort of a fairy orchid. Well, and of course, most of you know one of our favorite corsage orchid. This is the Cattleya. This one's just about to bloom. It's one of the volcano queens from Akasuka up here that they breed. Right at the moment I don't happen to have any Cattleyas in flower, but they're one of the nice large flowered orchids. Blooms don't last very long, but they grow really well here, and of course this is what you use for corsage. AKA Moth Orchid. I think most people who've got an orchid plant at home, they probably know this one. They come in all sorts of colors. This is a pretty fantastic shade here. But it's one of the very commonly grown large flowered orchids, which makes pretty good houseplant orchids. They also grow outdoors fine around here, and they will make multiple spikes. This one is forking here and going to make another spike. It already bloomed one spike out here, and then another one pushed out here. They will reflower. On the Phalaenopsis, we do not cut down the flower spikes unless the flower spikes die. If we leave them up and in place, they'll tend to rebloom on the same spikes. And one likes to grow her Masdevallias on lava rocks. They do pretty well there. This one's sitting right here on our front porch. They have this sort of a flower. Cute little guys. Got some red flowered ones in here somewhere too, like that. Here we go. Yeah, here's a red one. It's sitting on a rock right there. And then we have this very cute kind of brick red colored orchid here. This one's an Oncidium. Again, tags are lost, and there's a story behind all that too. Here's the deal. As I said, Helen, belongs to the Hilo Orchid Society. She's in charge of membership and all that. Well, turns out one of the orchid growers here on the island decided that they were going to go out of business. And when they did that, they donated all of their stock. The entire inventory was donated to the Hilo Orchid Society. And this was one of the orchids, which I found in the mess the other day, that was completely unpotted, had no bark on it, was just laying there in the bench and was flowering. There was a couple others just like it doing the same thing. So a real tough little guy, but I loved his flower color, so I grabbed this out of the mix and I potted it and I put it out here on the porch so we can enjoy in the flowers that it makes. To give you all some idea just what's happening here, here is a small fraction of the orchids that were brought in here to our place from the orchid farm. There are literally hundreds of them on these tables. There are all sorts. There's Cattleyas here, Dendrobiums, there's Oncidiums, you name it. There's just a whole lot of different kinds of orchids in the mix. All of them somewhat neglected because the farm was closing down. The entire works needs to be either transplanted to new containers and fertilized with the weeds pulled out, or they need to get hung up on a tree someplace. And so now this is only a tiny fraction. Okay, this is my one hoop house here. I believe this thing is about 25 feet long, and 12 feet wide. It's completely stuffed. There's no more room in here to hold any more orchids. There were so many orchids that I ran out of room in hoop houses. I ran out of room under shade cloth. I ran out of room on tables. And so here you will see we have some pretty nice looking Cattleyas, and really some very large ones in places. Cattleyas that are on pallets under a starfruit tree. Well, these here managed to fit on legitimate tables. And over here we have Gracie. So here's more. Here's more. There's more. They are sitting on little plastic tables. They are sitting on 5-gallon buckets under coffee trees. Orchids are everywhere. There are orchids everywhere. Even Gracie is saying, when are you going to get the heck out of here with all these orchids so I can get my table back, huh? Yeah, she used to like the sun on the table over there. There are orchids over here on the ground. There are more orchids over here behind the lime tree. Oh boy, looks like we got a Cattleya bloomed in purple. How's that look? Oh yeah, she's going to be a beauty. Starting to open. This one right here is one of Ellen's favorites. This is the coconut orchid. Isn't that thing just delightful? My front porch is filled with orchids. Most of the Paphiopediums ended up over here, the lady slippers. There's also some Cattleyas in here too. Well, so perhaps you may be asking yourself, why is the Green Garden Guy talking about orchids and flowers today? Well, I get two reasons. One, often when discussing food gardening, if I shift to flowers, it's probably a good 30% or so of people who are into food gardening who will get back to me immediately and say, oh, no, we don't do flowers. We don't waste garden space with that. It's only food. And, well, I remember being there myself at once. When I was a novice gardener, my mother grew flowers. I grew jalapenos, and so I didn't pay much attention to flowers either. And it wasn't until years later, after I'd gardened long enough in a spot, that I managed to kind of wear the soil down a bit, kind of burn it out, and needed to refresh the soil. I started using wildflower mixes as cover crops. I used them as green manure, and they were very effective. In fact, like a Clyde Robbins basic wildflower mix or a Northrop King wildflower mix, they work out really, really well. After maybe 2 years or so of growing them in an area that had been pretty much exhausted, without applying any more fertilizer, I was actually able to grow crops of tomatoes and peppers just from the residue of the wildflowers. Okay, A is a good point, right? They're good for the ground in general. Now, this is not about orchids exactly, but then I realized once I started to put the vegetables back in these areas and the wildflower seeds would pop up around my vegetables as weeds, I'd leave some of them. I weed some down, but I leave some going. They didn't hurt anything. And, well, people come by and they look in my garden, and there'd be Shirley poppies and bachelor buttons and California poppies and all this stuff popping up in between my vegetable crops. And they go, Bill, you grow flowers with your vegetables? I go, oh, yeah, as if I thought of this myself, right? Yeah, I took credit for the idea, even though it was an accident. And I found out this impressed people. It seemed strange to them that we would mix flowers and vegetables together. Well, shortly I began to realize that those flowers were drawing in pollinators that I never had there. Things that wouldn't have come in because I had tomatoes or peppers would come in because I had poppies and other plants in between. And so I started getting all manner of pollinators, different butterflies, different types of pollinating moths, bees, I don't know, all sorts of insects that pollinate. And a lot of times, just flies and things. Then I found out, too, that the beneficials, like a ladybug, for instance, are drawn to the nectar of flowers. The carrot family is excellent for ladybugs. They love the nectar that comes from the carrot family, like dill or parsley or carrots, or one of the common ornamentals in that family. You see Queen Anne's lace, for instance, and other things like this. But the carrot family would draw them in. So would some of the herbs, thyme, and so on. And I realized that I was drawing in pollinators because of a lot of the flowers I was growing, as well as drawing in beneficial and parasitic type insects. And so I was enhancing the entire garden, not just physically, by the pollination and the insect control. I was enhancing it here too, because I'd look out across a row, and a row of tomatoes is a nice thing to see, yeah, but a row of tomatoes has got flowers jutting out all over it with bees buzzing in them and so on. Way nicer to see. And so I am encouraging people who think that, no, I only grow food, I don't grow flowers. I'm encouraging them to plant flowers. We use marigolds here to keep the nematodes off my crops. They have dual purpose. The marigold looks real good out there and draws pollinators, but it also pushes away the pests. So there's a lot of good reasons for this. Now, I got the other reason, though, that I'm here yakking about orchids today in particular is because we have the Hilo Orchid Society. My partner is involved in the society. I'm a silent member. She pays for my membership, but I got little to say about the whole thing. The orchids are Ellen's deal, but they have all these orchids. Now, what I showed you just now, all these orchids I've got piled up around here on pallets and things, it's a small fraction of what was actually hauled off by the members. Anybody who had space was taking these orchids by the truckloads and bringing them to their places. So this is only a portion. And the Orchid Society has a public project. It's called the Orchid Isle Project. Very simple. And what they're doing is in public spaces everywhere that they can get into, they're tying orchids on trees. And so they're going to cover the whole east side of the island of Hawaii, I believe, with orchids. And so any place where it's possible, where they can get permission and so on. Like, for instance, the Hilo Zoo has been festooned. That's where a lot of the orchids went. They have a house over there that they put them in, and a lot of them will go up there. But they're going to go all over the place. And the society can use more membership. Personally, I think anybody who's really interested in orchids, you have come to the right place, because most of the commercial orchids that you find for sale on the mainland, if they weren't imported from places like Taiwan or other locations where they grow orchids for sale, then they probably came from the Big Island. Okay, we have orchid growers and orchid breeders all over the Puna and Hilo area. 2 houses down the street, my neighbor Ben, he's an orchid breeder. That's what he does. He's got big houses full of projects where he's creating brand new orchids. Now, he doesn't sell, orchids in pots for the nursery industry direct to you folks. He sells them to the guys that take them and then work with them to get them into pots, put names on them, and send them back out. So he's really at the very far end of the food chain on this. Now, some people here, like at Kasuka, up the road, they not only breed, and they have huge amounts of orchid houses there, but they do shipping, and they do direct sales. You can walk right into Akasuka on the days they're open and buy orchids here. If you're touring the island and you're not from Hawaii, but you're on the Big Island, they have certified orchid plants and probably some of the better breeding you're going to find here. They really do some good work up there. So we got orchids all over the place. Okay, this place is just an orchid island. And so, long before I ever moved here, both of us actually belonged to the society. I think one of the first trips we ever made, or second trips we ever made to Hawaii, we spotted the society having a meeting in the newspaper and decided to drop in. Well, it was all she wrote. After they stuffed me with food and then filled my arms with orchids, they said, hey, they're pretty nice people. I think we need to get to know them. Well, one thing led to another until Ellen is now, definitely part of the society. And so if anybody is out there is interested in joining and, would like to become part of the Orchid Isle project, right now what we need is transplanting teams. We need teams to come in, sit down. I'm going to put up tables here, actually, for this purpose, and we're going to take everything out of the pots. We're going to pull the weeds off. We're going to inspect them, clean them up, and then put them back in fresh media, and then see that they get fertilized and watered properly. Or we're going to take a lot of them and just pull them right out of the pots and get teams to go out and start putting them on trees around the area. And so it's going to go 2 different directions. The ones that go into pots will later be used maybe at orchid sales, or they'll be given to the members of the Orchid Society. We do that too. You can get the orchids from us, and or they're going to just become public one way or another. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, if you'd like to volunteer to hang orchids on trees, you don't have to live here. you want to come by on your vacation and spend a day over here on the Green Garden Guy's farm helping Ellen transplant orchids, hey, come on down. We got all kinds of stuff for you, but the society's great. They're really a bunch of nice people. It's something that I highly recommend people who like orchids or even just like flowers, get involved. There's a newsletter, there's a website. Like I say, you don't have to live here. We got members off island. I was once a member off island. So I'm doing some recruiting, and I'll post Ellen's contact information. She's the one in charge of membership. It's pecetrain at Gmail. We'll get you to her. PECETRAIN at gmail.com. We'll get you through to Ellen if you're interested. She can get you to become a member. She can get you connected with the whole situation. I'm just a mouthpiece. That's all I am. I'm over here talking about it, and I can see that the Orchid Society has used up every spare table, and even every old pallet under a tree around here, and so I want some of my space back. I need some help. We need some planting teams. We're thinking about 6-person planting teams, perhaps, is the idea. So, there you go. That's the 2 reasons that I'm here talking about flowers and orchids today. 1, if you're not using flowers in your garden, oh man, come on, let's get with the program. It's part of nature, it's part of everything that happens, and your mind will be so glad. So will your nose. I walk out in the evenings and the Tahitian gardenia's blooming, or the angel's trumpet opens up, and so I'm sitting resting on the porch as the sun's going down, inhaling the perfume of the night. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff involved. Your senses definitely involved here. All right, so aloha, everybody hang loose. I'm going to put some text in here, both down below, and I guess I'll put some across the screen too, if you want to make contact. Y'all have a great new year.